Europe has just made its boldest military move in decades. What began as a small stabilization fund called SAFE has now exploded into a $170 billion rearmament plan, a massive industrial push designed to rebuild Europe's defense capabilities from the ground up. But here's the real shock. Canada, a country outside Europe, is being positioned as a key supplier inside this historic rearmament program. Meanwhile, the United States, NATO's traditional heavyweight, has been completely left out. No preferred access, no participation, no seat at the table. This isn't just a funding announcement, it's a restructuring of power across the Western alliance. Europe is choosing new partners, building new supply chains, and reshaping who gets to influence the future of NATO's military industry. So why did Europe suddenly pour $170 billion into rearmament? Why is Canada being elevated above the United States? And what does this mean for global power in the next decade? SAFE was originally launched as a modest initiative to stabilize Europe's fragmented defense supply chain. But within months, Brussels expanded it dramatically, turning SAFE into a full-scale rearmament blueprint worth $170 billion, the largest collective defense investment in EU history. The goal is clear. Europe wants to rebuild ammunition stockpiles, accelerate production of artillery, drones, armored vehicles, and next-generation air defense systems. After years of dependency on external suppliers, EU leaders now want strategic autonomy, and they want it fast. Within this massive program, Canada has been granted special entry as a preferred non-EU supplier, something no other country outside Europe has achieved. This gives Canada access to contracts, procurement pipelines, and joint development projects across the entire rearmament effort. Meanwhile, the United States, despite leading NATO military operations, was not invited to join SAFE in any form. That absence is deliberate, and the consequences are enormous. Europe's decision to allocate $170 billion is not an overreaction, it is a response to hard realities. The war in Ukraine exposed the severe weaknesses of Europe's defense industry: depleted ammunition stockpiles, production lines running at peacetime speed, and a reliance on foreign suppliers for critical systems. Several NATO members reported they had only days or weeks of ammunition reserves left. European firms struggled to meet urgent demand, forcing EU states to turn repeatedly to the United States for emergency supplies. For Brussels, this became a strategic vulnerability. By scaling SAFE into a continent-wide rearmament plan, Europe aims to rebuild industrial capacity, secure long-term ammunition supply, boost strategic autonomy, and ensure Europe can defend itself without relying on Washington. To accomplish this, the EU needs external partners who are stable, trusted, and politically aligned, and Canada is emerging as the ideal fit. Canada's rise inside Europe's $170 billion rearmament plan didn't happen by accident. For years, Canadian defense manufacturers have built a reputation for reliability, political neutrality, and high-quality engineering. Unlike the United States, Canada does not overwhelm partners with political pressure or demand strategic concessions as part of defense cooperation. This made Ottawa the perfect fit for a Europe seeking autonomy and stability. Canada also brings real industrial capacity. Its aerospace sector is globally respected, its communications and cyber defense companies are NATO standard, and its manufacturers supply essential components for vehicles, drones, sensors, and advanced battlefield systems. Most importantly, Canada's political environment is considered predictable, a key factor for European governments wary of America's sharp political swings. In Brussels' internal assessment, Canada scored high on 3 criteria: trust, stability, and scalability. All 3 are essential for a long-term rearmament program, and that combination is something the US cannot offer right now. This is why Europe opened its doors to Canada and kept them closed to Washington. The most astonishing part of Europe's rearmament strategy is the complete absence of the United States. Despite being NATO's largest military power and the continent's traditional security guarantor, the U.S. was not invited into SAFE, not included in procurement talks, and not given access to any part of the $170 billion opportunity. European officials have been blunt behind closed doors. They do not want American dominance over their industrial base. For decades, Europe relied heavily on U.S. suppliers, creating a dependency that many now view as a strategic liability. Political gridlock in Washington and unpredictable shifts in foreign policy have made European leaders increasingly uncomfortable. By design, SAFE is structured to empower European industry first, with Canada acting as the only external partner. For the United States, this exclusion marks a rare moment of diminished influence, signaling that Europe is prepared to enter a new era of strategic autonomy without American oversight. Europe's transformation of SAFE into a $170 billion rearmament plan reflects a deeper strategic shift. The EU no longer wants to depend on the United States for its long-term security. The war in Ukraine exposed the vulnerability of Europe's industrial capacity, but it also accelerated Brussels' desire to regain control over its defense future. European leaders now believe that strategic autonomy requires three pillars: domestic production, diversified partners, and reduced reliance on U.S. military industry. Canada fits into this model perfectly, providing reliable, Western-aligned support without the political baggage or dominance associated with American power. At the same time, Europe is pushing for joint procurement, shared production lines, and secure supply chains that it can control internally. SAFE is no longer a fund. It is a blueprint for a European defense ecosystem where Europe, not Washington, dictates priorities. And the inclusion of Canada in this system shows exactly how serious the EU is about rewriting the security architecture of the West.
Europe's decision-making process was not driven by emotion. It was a calculated assessment of which partner could strengthen Europe's security without reshaping Europe's politics. Internal EU analysis focused on three critical criteria: reliability, political stability, and strategic neutrality. Canada excelled in all three. European leaders viewed the US as too dominant, too unpredictable, and too entangled in global rivalries that Europe does not want to be dragged into. From trade disputes to shifting foreign policy doctrines, Washington's positions have become difficult for Europe to depend on long-term. Canada, by contrast, is consistently aligned with Western values but avoids aggressive geopolitical posturing. It is strong enough to contribute meaningfully, yet modest enough not to overshadow EU leadership. This balance made Canada the ideal choice. And by selecting Canada alone, Europe sent a clear message. It wants partners who enhance autonomy, not partners who take control. For Canada, Europe's rearmament strategy is a transformative opportunity. Being positioned as a key supplier means Canadian companies can tap into one of the largest defense investments in modern European history. This includes contracts across manufacturing, munitions, aerospace, cyber defense, AI-enabled battlefield systems, and advanced communications technologies. Economically, the €170 billion plan could generate thousands of high-skilled jobs across Canada's industrial heartland, stimulate domestic R&D, and accelerate innovation in sectors tied to national security. Politically, the benefits are even greater. Canada gains leverage in NATO, strengthens its transatlantic ties, and becomes a central player in Western defense cooperation. For decades, Canada was seen as a secondary actor in global defense markets. SAFE changes that completely. The EU's decision elevates Canada from a supportive NATO member to a core industrial partner, trusted to help rebuild Europe's military backbone. This is a strategic rise that even many experts did not anticipate. The consequences for the United States are significant. For the first time, Europe is deliberately constructing a massive defense program without American involvement. This sidelines U.S. defense contractors who traditionally dominated European procurement, accounting for billions in annual sales. By excluding the U.S. from SAFE, Europe reduces its reliance on American weapons, technology, and supply chains, a shift that challenges decades of U.S. strategic influence. It also weakens Washington's ability to shape European military priorities, as procurement decisions will increasingly favor EU and Canadian partners instead of American suppliers. Beyond the economic impact, the geopolitical signal is even more damaging. Europe is showing it can build a defense future without American oversight. This undermines the United States' role as NATO's indispensable industrial leader and marks one of the clearest signs of declining U.S. leverage in the West. The rise of Canada within SAFE is not just Canada's gain, it is a direct loss for Washington. Europe's €170 billion rearmament shift doesn't only reshape EU defense, it fundamentally alters the architecture of Western security. For decades, NATO's industrial backbone depended on the United States, with Europe serving primarily as a consumer. SAFE flips this model. By empowering European manufacturers and integrating Canada as a central supplier, the EU is creating a new ecosystem that reduces American dominance in procurement and decision-making. This will influence how NATO coordinates logistics, stockpiles ammunition, and sources advanced weapon systems. European forces could increasingly rely on Canadian and EU-made equipment, which means Washington will no longer control the industrial pace of the alliance. It also opens the door for a more multipolar NATO, one where power is shared among several industrial hubs instead of concentrated in the U.S. defense sector. This evolution strengthens Europe's autonomy while giving Canada unprecedented geopolitical leverage. But it also raises the question, where will the United States stand in this new balance of power? What makes this moment even more dramatic is that €170 billion may not be the final number. EU officials have already hinted privately that SAFE could be expanded further, possibly to €200 to €220 billion if security conditions deteriorate or if member states accelerate their rearmament timelines. If that expansion occurs, Canada's role would grow even more significant. Ottawa could be invited to participate in joint missile programs, next-generation air defense initiatives, or even integrated European early warning systems. Some policymakers in Brussels have suggested including Canada in long-term projects that were once considered exclusively European. This would cement Canada's position as a structural pillar of European defense, a status no non-European country has ever achieved. And each euro added to SAFE increases the distance between America's past dominance and Europe's new collaborative model with Canada. The twist is clear. The deeper SAFE grows, the more central Canada becomes, and the more the U.S. fades from the picture. SAFE is no longer a technical program buried inside EU bureaucracy. It has become the largest coordinated rearmament plan in modern European history. And at the heart of it stands Canada, the unexpected but indispensable partner shaping Europe's defense future. For the first time, the United States is outside the core industrial circle of a major Western defense initiative. Canada moves up, America steps back. That shift alone signals a new era of geopolitical alignment, one where influence is earned through reliability, stability, and partnership, not dominance. The question now is simple. How far will Europe push this realignment, and how much will Canada rise as SAFE expands? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to follow every major shift in the Canada-EU-US power triangle, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications.